Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, you can support the show and help us grow by listening on Fountain, an awesome podcast app on iOS or Android. You can share your thoughts on this episode or simply say thanks by sending some sats with a comment. This is called the Boost. Getting started is easy. You can top up your Fountain wallet with a bank card or any Lightning wallet. And you can earn sats just by listening on Fountain and being an active member of the community. Visit fountain.fm to learn more. All right, we're back on the Mike White Podcast. We got another Bitcoin-themed episode here. I'm joined by S2 of RoninDojo. S2, how you doing today?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. What was one of my first Bitcoin conferences I met you at? My first kind of real one, BitBlock Boom in Austin, Texas, and you were there with the RoninDojo team. And I saw you guys had these privacy-focused nodes, and I feel like I'm a fairly new Bitcoiner. I guess it's been about 2 years now, but I've been wanting to learn more about nodes, and I know they're important, and I still haven't taken as much action and really learned about that whole aspect of Bitcoin. So I was really excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here, man.
And so I want to start off with talking about RoninDojo. I saw there's a lot of different companies make Bitcoin nodes. You can make your own Bitcoin node. It's definitely, I wouldn't say super easy. It probably will take a little YouTube tutorials, maybe some BTC sessions videos before you might want to put a whole day dedicated to that. But you guys have a pretty pre-made option that is open source, and you have all the software support as well as the hardware. So I was wondering if you could tell the listeners about what exactly you guys make there at RoninDojo.
Yeah. So our Bitcoin node, and by the way, if you're a newbie listening and you don't know what a node is, that's okay. This is something that as you get further into Bitcoin and you get to kind of an intermediate level, a novice level Bitcoiner, you'll start to care about these nodes. But our node, like you said, is made to be easy to use. We have plug and play hardware, if you will. So you just plug in an Ethernet cable into your home internet router, and you plug in a power cable. And then you just wait for like a little red light to turn on the front of the device. And then you can log in to the user interface. It's made to be, clean, sexy user interface that's, everyone's used to their shiny buttons on their Apple phones these days. So we're trying to make it, plug and play, easy to use, clean, sexy interface. And yeah, that's, the point is really once you want to connect one of your Bitcoin wallets to a node, and we'll go into the benefits of why you do that here in a minute. But once you're ready and at that point to, okay, I got my wallet, I have my Bitcoin, I'm ready to connect to my own node, then, we're here to help those people and make it an easy process.
It's awesome. And so if people are out there and seeing that, that doesn't sound complicated, but it definitely is different than going to a bank, going to Chase, opening up an account. Some people may be asking, like, why do I need to use Bitcoin? Isn't the dollar fine? And so I was wanting to hear your story about what attracted you to Bitcoin, and why are you so dedicated to it that you became a co-founder of making these nodes?
Yeah. So, really, the first things that I saw about Bitcoin were like the Silk Road, what happened with Ross Ulbricht and all that. And also I kind of got into mining early on, back whenever graphics cards, you could spin up some graphics cards to mine with. And really what struck me about it was there's this new way to transact outside of the banks that you don't need to ask anyone's permission. You can transact however you want to. And, if you can transact privately, then you have this new private digital cash where you can effectively opt out of all of the bullshit that we deal with modern banking. I could move $1 million from here to Europe in the click of a button for just, a few pennies worth of transaction fees or under $1 worth of fees. So that immediately struck me as a powerful network, right? It's because I was like, oh wow, it's like instantly wiring money across the world for cheap. And then you start to think about things like, obviously they're printing the shit out of the dollar, the corrupt nature of the dollar itself, and you look into the fundamentals of Bitcoin, and I started to fall in love with all the incentives. How, there's obviously there's scarcity to Bitcoin, and people focus on that a lot, but also there's, more than that, there's this beautiful game of incentives where people have to basically spend computer power to process the transactions, and when they find a block they get a reward. And just the basics of Bitcoin really struck me, how it's this simple but beautiful ticking clock that will always run. And then you start to look into its decentralized nature, and because your mind immediately goes to, well, how can the government attack this? How can they turn this
Yeah.
off? You take that black pill for a second. It's too good to be true. And then you start to look at, oh wow, there's anyone can run one of these miners, anyone can run one of these nodes, that these are the two pillars that support the network, and anyone can participate all over the world. And there's no way anyone's going to turn all of this off. And that's when it really struck me and it hit home that, this is decentralized. I don't have to ask permission to use it. I can just opt into it with my home computer or phone, or, however you want to participate, running nodes, running wallets, running miners. Um, and I just fell in love with this, the beauty of the network, and that's really what struck me. And from there, I was hooked.
I think you touched on those two key pieces. The first, a lot of people, I think, understand the value in being able to send value across borders, settle instantly or near instantly very quickly. But then they get down the crypto rabbit hole, the whole blockchain rabbit hole, and they think, oh, well, Bitcoin was first or something like that, but there can be something better. But then they don't go down that second part where you learned about like the scarcity, the decentralized nature. Anyone can run a node. I mean, mining is I guess, a little different. But were you around during the block size wars? And
Yeah,
did
yeah.
that kind of scare you, seeing like so many people push for a change that would make running a node very uneconomical for most people?
Yeah, and that's why, you have the ability to vote by, which what node you're running, what version you're running, and which node you're using to process your transactions, or anyone who's using your node. You have the ability to stand up and have a say. So that's the beauty of it.
Can you so this is something I'm still don't think I have a good grasp on, and the way consensus works and how the whole node network works in Bitcoin, and choosing which is the true blockchain.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not as simple as whoever is running the most nodes with the whichever version of Bitcoin, that is what is Bitcoin, right? It's not that simple. It's more like whichever version of Bitcoin is being ran on the nodes that are being used the most, right? Because it's all about which nodes are processing the transactions, right? Because it doesn't
Hmm.
really matter what version you're running if you're sitting there and you have a node that's processing no transactions. Um, so it really matters what all the big nodes who are processing all the transactions, what versions they run. That's going to be who's enforcing the rules. That's going to be, if you're not running your own node, you're using someone else's node. So that's, you're hoping whoever's node you're using is, their incentives are aligned with yours, and they're going to be on your team, for lack of better words. Um, but that's why, you run your own node. That's a part of it, so you can have that choice to run whatever version of Bitcoin you want if something like that happens. and transact how you want to.
So you're running your own node. You get rid of that trust. You know what Bitcoin you care about, that you believe in, and it's all that open source software available to anyone. How does your node interact with a miner? Like, say if I wanted to buy a node, a RoninDojo node, and I send you Bitcoin, how would that transaction take place on the blockchain?
Yeah. So to clarify for anyone listening, our node is not a miner. That would be whenever you broadcast a transaction, you'd be broadcasting it, from your node into the mempool, and it sits there in this big pool of transactions where you've paid a fee, and basically whoever's it's ranked and who's paid the most in fees, who will get into the next block. And when the miners find a block, if your fee is high enough to get into that block, then your transaction will be mined as part of that block and added to the big long blockchain as we know it. So you're not running the miner in this process. It's all a part of batching basically big groups of transactions from the mempool that people have paid fees to broadcast, and then those being found in a block by a miner. And then that block is, of course, recorded, propagated across the whole network to all of the nodes. You could think of a node like a ledger book, right? And you could think of a miner almost like the person that, the bookkeeper that inscribes those ledger books, right? So
Nice.
if you have a node, you're really, it's like having the equivalent of like a bank's ledger in your own home, right?
Okay. So you touched on the mempool in there as well, and it's multiple mempools, right? There's not like a singular mempool. So how if I start up a node, do I have to find how do I find or communicate with the miners, and how would I conceptualize the mempool? I know I can pull up mempool.space on the
Right.
internet, and I know
So
that's
you could think of it like each node has their own mempool of transactions. And you can adjust the size of the mempool. So you could have it, I think the default's like 300 megabytes, or you could set it to a gigabyte or 5 gigabytes. And basically, whenever a transaction is broadcasted, it's broadcast across, uh, a bunch of nodes mempools, and everyone's storing that in their mempool. Some miners are storing, gigabytes worth of mempool if they have to, because they want to see every transaction possible and have a chance to mine it. But basically, it's a big pool of transactions that each person has on their node. And whenever you broadcast a transaction, it's sitting in all of these pools, waiting to get into a block, waiting to be found. Now, if the fee isn't high enough, and say a ton of people come in and they're willing to pay a higher fee to get their transaction processed, then your transaction might sit in this pool, in your node's pool or someone else's node, and it might sit there for a long time because people are willing to pay more. So if some people have smaller pools, it might get dropped out of those. If someone has a bigger pool, like a miner, then it could sit there for a while. Yeah, you could think of it like each node has their own little pool of transactions, and they can decide how many they want to fit in that pool.
And so is it important that a node be connected like 24/7 type thing? Like what happens if there's a power? Yeah.
Whenever you're using your Bitcoin wallet, you have to have that node behind that wallet. It has to be online. So that's one of the things is if you are going to run a node, you do need good home internet and power. You can use it remotely. You don't have to be home to use your node, but you do have to have it at a solid location.
Have you found any like common mistakes people have when they when they start spinning up their own node? Does it cause like if they don't have a certain speed of internet?
I'd say if you have
yeah.
really, really slow internet in a remote area, it's probably going to be rough running a node. If you have frequent power outages, you'll want one of those little UPS battery backups. They're like $60 from Walmart. That's always good to have. I plug my home router into that too, and my nodes it's not good to power cycle all that stuff. But yeah, those are pretty much the basics. There's a lot of pitfalls whenever you're building your own node and getting in the command line and doing all that yourself. And we won't dive into all that, but we're just here to make it easy. But the main things are just good power, good internet, and just making sure you have, like, I'd say 25 Mbps or better at least.
Nice. And that's another reason I really like what you guys are doing and other companies rather than making your own if you've never done it before, because you have like these chat rooms and things like that where it seems like it's very easy to go and hop on and ask someone that's done it before a question when spinning up a node.
Yep. We do have premium support that comes with every node. We have, like, you can open a support ticket on our website, and we have support subscriptions. Also, the Telegram community chats are a great resource. Just warning to anyone listening, watch out when you're in public chat rooms on things like Telegram or Twitter, anything like that. There's lots and lots of scammers, so watch out for anywhere in the chats. They love to private message you and ask you about how much Bitcoin you own.
Yeah, it's like rule number 1 of Bitcoin: never say how much Bitcoin you have.
Yeah. Yeah, or they'll randomly open a private message with you and be like, hey sir, how's your Bitcoin trading going?
Yeah, that, or it's some like Asian woman that's showing a lot of skin and asking about
how's your day?
Yeah. So you got me on the node thing where I want to be able to vote and say, okay, this is Bitcoin. There's only going to be 21 million. This thing, block time is going to be fixed. I don't want to change any of that. So I want to have a vote. I want to run a node. I want to trust myself and not someone else. But what about, I see on your website, there's a lot of talk about privacy and making Bitcoin to be like cash, where right now you can't, anytime we transact credit card, oh gosh, I'm sure like all the advertisers get so much data from our credit card spending. So what benefit does RoninDojo have when it comes to privacy?
Yeah, so since people are newer to Bitcoin, who are your listeners, I was taking the approach of, why a node, because they support the network, because, you have your vote of, and you're verifying your own transactions, that kind of thing. But really, the funny thing is now Bitcoin is fine. It doesn't need your node to support the network. There's plenty out there. That's not the main point to run a node anymore. It's good to understand all the why, the philosophical side, but the true point now of running a node, in my opinion, is a selfish reason. And it is that you have your Bitcoin now and you're ready to transact with it and protect it privately. And how our nodes are relevant to it is basically whenever you run your own node and you're not using someone else's, they're not able to log all that data on you. They're not able to see, the transactions that you're broadcasting. They're not able to see your IP address, right? You're running your own node over the Tor anonymity network, so your internet service provider doesn't know that you're using Bitcoin. Even at that network level, you're protected. Then you're able to transact using that node privately. We have features like you'll hear about CoinJoins as you get deeper into Bitcoin. We have a CoinJoin feature on there called Whirlpool. It was made by Samurai Wallet. And you can use your Samurai Wallet with one of these nodes and effectively transact privately on this public and open blockchain. That's another thing. As you get deeper into Bitcoin, you'll notice people can see everything about you when you use Bitcoin. They can, if you give KYC, like your ID, your selfie, they can tie that right to a Bitcoin address, and then they can follow hop by hop how you spend that Bitcoin, where it is, how much you have. They can tie that to your identity. So using CoinJoin is, one of those ways you can help muddy the waters and they can't follow it. Now you can't undo that KYC. That's a tough part. So I'd recommend, buying Bitcoin for cash if you can, or buying from miners. Try to never give your ID up whenever you're buying that Bitcoin initially. But it's, there's that great option that you can CoinJoin. You can make it hard for people to follow your Bitcoin on the blockchain. And, believe me, it is very easy. It's just hop by hop by hop on a little graph. It's very easy to follow Bitcoin unless you use CoinJoin. So really the selfish reasons of running the node is you're protecting yourself at that network level using, running it over the Tor anonymity network. You're protecting yourself at the blockchain level using CoinJoins. And the node is what's enabling all of this, and you're connecting your Bitcoin wallets to it. And, it's a bunch of fancy talk, it's a bunch of technical jargon, but once you get into it, it really is just tapping a few buttons, getting everything connected, and then you can spend Bitcoin privately.
Well, I think that's huge. And before, you asked me 5 years ago if I cared about privacy, and I was like, I mean, not really, to be honest, because I kind of assume everyone can kind of know and find out things if they really wanted to. But then these last years during COVID, and then I saw what they did with Canadian truckers and freezing their bank accounts and anyone that supported their bank accounts. I think this feature is more important now.
Even went a step further. You saw they went after the Bitcoiners who tried to support it as well.
Jeez.
They did chain analysis and figured out how much was donated, who had it. I believe even a Bitcoiner got raided. It's very important to, you should have the right to donate to whatever political parties you want to privately. That's definitely should be a right. So this is something that's becoming more and more important, especially just all the, scary government black pill stuff out the window. We still live in a pretty free place, so we have a lot of blessings here versus using Bitcoin in a truly under a hostile regime, that kind of thing. But let's just take a step back and think about the physical security aspect. If I have 10 Bitcoin on an address and I go up and I buy a t-shirt from you at a conference, at a booth, all you have to do is click on the change from that address, and then you can see right there, standing in front of you, I have 10 Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
If you went down the street and you swiped your debit card at the gas station or something, and the clerk said, "Oh, you have $25,000 in your bank account," and they could see that right there, you would be shocked, right?
Yeah.
You'd be freaked out. And a lot of people who are newer to Bitcoin, they have no idea, like, you can see so easily how much Bitcoin you have on an address. They don't realize they can have their identity tied to their addresses, that kind of thing. So this is where I think CoinJoin really hits home for a lot of people on, it's first and foremost physical security threat. And then on top of that, you should be able to invoke your right to financial privacy.
Yeah, for sure. And can you give a overview of what exactly CoinJoin is?
Yeah. So we'll keep it simple. CoinJoin is, in a non-technical way of saying, it's like going into a room with 5 other people with $100 bills, and you swap those $100 bills and you walk out with the same amount of money you came in with. Another way to think about it would be like smelting gold. Everyone comes in with gold pieces that have serial number on it. They smelt it all into a big bar and then smelt it back into smaller pieces that are new. Everyone walks out with the same amount of gold they came in with.
Yeah, but you can't tell. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't tell exactly how much that one person had.
Exactly. that's the best way I can explain it non-technically. But CoinJoin is basically, like you'll hear about Samurai Wallets Whirlpool. That's an implementation of CoinJoin. And basically it's these coordinated rounds where people who, have Samurai Wallet, who are running these nodes, all come together and come into a round and do a CoinJoin. And basically on the blockchain, whenever you look at it, like on a transaction graph, what it creates is a large degree of like plausible deniability of whose money is whose once you come out the other side. It's like going through a big blender, and the more rounds this goes through, the more and more interpretations of this graph there could be. So it's hard coded, there's 5 input, 5 output. Now there can be surge cycles and stuff, but we'll keep it simple. There's 5 input, 5 output, so there's 1,496 interpretations to that graph. There's 33% likelihood of value transfer between input and output. So that's just from one round, right? These devices keep mixing over and over again every round they can join in. And every time that happens, that's an additional 1,496 interpretations. So by 3, 5, 10 mixes, there's thousands and thousands of possibilities of that value transfer of where that coin has come from.
Yeah, that's so important, especially now when they're trying to push CBDCs. There needs to be a digital cash alternative, and that seems like the best answer from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's a strong response to the cypherpunk dream of what Bitcoin is supposed to be, and it had kind of been dying out a little bit with KYC coming in, these big KYC regimes, and collecting everyone's IDs and all of this. You get a little bit concerned about where's all this heading, and Samurai Wallet really stepped up and gave a strong response with popularizing Whirlpool and Dojo. And now we know more than ever that if we want digital cash, privacy is a really, really important part of that. Otherwise, it loses its fungibility. And say there was like blacklisted Bitcoin, whitelisted Bitcoin, it became totally surveilled, hard to spend without permission, it became highly confiscatable. Then Bitcoin would very quickly begin to lose its value proposition. So
yeah, and
go ahead.
I used to think that was like a very small probability scenario, but then Canada, I mean, for first world country, and they're doing those crazy things. So it's definitely definitely need to have that
regulatory
option.
capture should never be underestimated, man. It's that's how they think they're gonna kill this thing. That's how they think they're gonna get out ahead of this thing, is through they can't turn it off. So the next best thing to do is regulate it to death.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into your founding story too, because I was reading about on your website saying that you and the other co-founder didn't really have much technical coding skills, but then talking to you, seeing your product, it is very technical. So I was just wondering how that journey went from not really knowing too much about coding to where you are now.
Oh yeah, I guess it was like 2018 or so. Zelko and I met, and we were really doing the same thing at the same time with a few other people, just trying to get Dojo running on Raspberry Pis, back during the Raspberry Pi like node craze. And we were both writing guides, basically. We had 2 different guides that we ended up merging together. And that's kind of what RoninDojo originally was, just like a series of guides on GitHub that Zelko and I worked on to help people. Then from there, I was kind of like getting into Linux. We both had started our Linux journey, and then getting into Bash. And, I was like, oh, we could script this, and we could automate this deployment, and rather than having to follow this big long guide, we could see what we can do to make this easier. And so Zelko and myself took off on working on that, and gained some team members along the way who actually knew what they were doing and came in, and that's one of the keys, I think, was bringing in people who are better than you at what you do. We got Pavel, who's amazing, our front end Ronin UI guy. So when you're using that sexy interface, you can thank him. And we got a few other guys now that are working on stuff. And we got our hardware guy. He made whenever you look up our node on our RoninDojo.io website, you'll see it, like the sexy hardware. We have a very talented hardware engineer. So yeah, just lucky to everyone shared a passion for the same idea and came together, and it all just worked out. It's really an open source success story, and ode to why open source is so cool and so important.
That's awesome. And did you have any business experience before that, or any startup experience type thing?
Yeah, I had ran a small business, but it was just my small personal business with a few friends from high school. But we just had a small little glass company, and I had always grown up with tech and playing video games and that kind of stuff. But really, Bitcoin and Ronin was my first foray into Linux and to Bash scripting, and tried out some JS stuff, and now working on learning some other skills.
And when you're learning all these skills, and I know you have a whole education page on your website, so you guys are very you promote that to make sure people know what they're doing. Was it all Bitcoin focused, and just seeing these projects in Bitcoin that you want to do, and you're just trying to figure out what I need to learn in order to solve this? Or were you kind of going generally, all right, Linux, what are the fundamentals of Linux, and how can I understand this?
Yeah, well, I first wanted to switch over from Windows to Linux. That was my original thing. I was kind of getting into Bitcoin at the same time. So I went down the Linux rabbit hole first, and I did my own home networking setup and pfSense and all of that. So kind of Linux networking kind of thing. And then I thought I'd get a Raspberry Pi and start tinkering with it, and fell into the whole Bitcoin nodes thing. I built that, what was it called? Raspy Bolt, by that project by Staticus. I think it was one of the first DIY node projects out there. It's just a GitHub guide. But yeah, I built that in, oh gosh, what was that? 2016, 2017. And Then from there went down the node rabbit hole and met Zelko and wanted to get Dojo running on single board computers and all that.
Well, that's pretty amazing how quickly you went from not being familiar to it to co-founding and running RoninDojo with all those other people. But is there any final thoughts on what people should know about RoninDojo nodes, or anything we didn't cover?
Yeah, basically the takeaway should be, if you're not running your own Bitcoin node, then you're using someone else's. As your stack of Bitcoin starts to get bigger, you really should start to think about this. And not even to shill our product, but just in general, take your privacy seriously. As your stack gets bigger, take securing that stack seriously. And running a Bitcoin node is one of those stepping stones to being your own personal bank.
I love it. You definitely got me fired up and ready to go. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast and just what you're doing there with RoninDojo. But appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Happy to. And hey, jump in our Telegram chat, guys. If you ever want to, talk Bitcoin privacy, we have a whole section in there for it. Like I said, watch out for the scammers. As always, they'll love to PM you and ask you how much Bitcoin you own. But yeah, just jump in the chats anytime. Our website's RoninDojo.io, and our Telegram is at RoninDojo Node, all one word. Same thing with our Twitter or X, whatever the hell it's called. Yeah, it's at RoninDojo Node on there as well. And yeah, hit us up if you have any questions, guys. We're happy to, this is our passion, so we're happy to talk it out.
Sounds good. And I'll have all that in the show notes. And thanks for listening. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.